Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all with us. I think we've got a whole bunch of people joining us tonight. Welcome to the Nicholas School of the Environment. Tonight's information session is going to be on the Duke University's upcoming 3-course sequence on unoccupied aircraft systems, also known as UAS and also known as drones, operations and applications in environmental science. I'm Laura Lips. You've probably received a few emails from me. I coordinate continuing education programs at the Nicholas School. And my co-host for the session is Hannah Rogers from Duke Learning Innovation. And on tonight's call, you will hear from all 3 of our course instructors about how you can learn to become a scientist pilot through our program. So we'll have 3 presenters tonight. I will introduce them briefly. And I also want to share that for anyone that can't make it tonight, but wants to see the info session, we are recording this meeting, but the participant list or the video will not be shared. So you don't have to worry about that if you're camera shy. So the first speaker we're going to have tonight is Dr. Dave Johnston, our lead instructor and associate professor of the practice here at the Nicholas School. He's also the director of the Marine Robotics and Remote Sensing MARS Lab at the Duke Marine Lab. And he'll speak first about the first course in the sequence, which he is leading just in a few weeks in October. After that, we'll hear a little bit from Troy Walton, who's our lead instructor here tonight for the second course in the series, UAS Operations for Environmental Scientists. Troy is the remote sensing lead for Attollo UAS, our instructional partner, and they provide training and UAS services to both the commercial and the governmental sectors. Thanks, Troy, for being here with us tonight as well. And then finally, Dr. Justin Ridge will take us through the third course in the sequence, quantitative analysis of UAS data. Justin's a research scientist here at Duke and leads the Marine Robotics and Remote Sensing Labs programs in coastal mapping research. So before I turn it over to Dave, just one more housekeeping note. After the introductions from all of the 3 course instructors, we will have a question and answer session. You have a couple of different options for asking questions. You can post your questions, write them in the chat, and they will go directly to Hannah, who will ask the questions and, kind of group them together. Or if you would like to ask your question out loud, please wait until the end and you can raise your hand and Hannah will call on you to unmute yourself and ask your question. We ask that you please keep your questions concise at the end of the session, and that otherwise, if you're not asking a question, to please keep yourself muted. And as I noted before, we are recording the meeting, but we will not be recording the participants or your video or your audio. So with that, I am going to spotlight Dave and stop sharing my screen so that he can share his and turn it over to him.
Thanks, Laura, for the great introduction, and welcome everybody to our info session. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about this course sequence that we're running. This is the second year that we're running it, and it's focused on trying to train people to be more than drone pilots, right? But to be scientist pilots, and so it's probably good to start with thinking about that a little bit before we kind of continue on into the rest of the info session. Now, in a lot of cases, most education programs for drone aviation are kind of focused on just that, right? Just training you how to fly a drone. And in a lot of cases, it's set up to be able to get you to a point where you might become certified, right? And which is a really important milestone. But it doesn't necessarily address some of the important things that you'll need to learn to be able to successfully collect good data, right? It's one thing to be able to fly legally and ethically, but the next challenge that you'll have is how do you actually fly in a way that allows you to collect really good, robust scientific data and answer the questions that that you are seeking to answer in your research. And so that's kind of where we come in, right? We are certified drone pilots. We're qualified and current. But we also know how to use these tools to be able to collect data in a way that allows us to push forward our scientific programs. Okay, and so that's the sort of important value add that you get if you take our course sequence, right? It's beyond just learning how to fly a drone. It's about how to fly it in a scientific context. So when we think about that, this course sequence essentially is going to, in many ways, kind of deconstruct this process and get you to think about how drones work, how they can be applied in different sort of situations when we're collecting data, and how to put it all together in a way that allows you to go from, that inception where you think, okay, here's my idea, through flight planning, all the way to the end, and even through the analysis components, right, where you're actually going to start working with the data and really understand how drones can be applied to their fullest potential in the environmental sciences. So this course sequence is 3 in number, right? We have an introductory course, which is entitled Introduction to UAS in the Environmental Sciences. And in this case, it's really focused on introducing you to technology, the kind of software and hardware that we use, and really gets you to the point where you can identify how exactly you want to apply drones in your own research, and understand how other people are applying it as well. The second course focuses on operations, right? So this is, again, learning more about the basics of flight operations, and takes you not just into that area where you can become legally certified. We don't actually do that, but you'll be at a point where you'll be able to do that after that. But more so to be able to fly effectively for scientific research purposes. And really, the goal here is to become that scientist pilot. And then the last course is really focused on what to do with the data when you get it back, right? And in this case, it's a very sort of fundamental hands-on approach where you'll be able to actually work with the software systems that allow you to be able to do habitat assessments, count animals, a whole bunch of different things, right? And at that point, you really should be set up to be able to go from flight all the way through analysis and inference, right? To get you to go from just collecting imagery, say, from a drone to actually turning that into knowledge. The other aspects of the course are interesting. We use a set of tools that allow us to be able to interact with you all. But one of the key components of our approach is the use of gamification in this course. So when we think about courses and going through the process of learning, we're often faced with assessments. In our case, we are trying to make those assessments fun and engaging. And we do that in a bunch of different ways. We have a variety of different activities that are gamified, including some really cool sort of choose your own adventure type assessments that you'll participate in as you go through the course. And the center of that is actually a Discord server that we use, which is kind of that opportunity for us to build community with our students, create a persistent place where there's messaging. And it also includes a leaderboard and an internal economy system that can reward you for working hard and getting the right answers, and in some cases reward you for making the mistakes that you want to make here in the course before you go and make them out there in the real world. And so this is meant to make that sort of assessment part a lot more fun and interesting, give you some rewards, a sense of achievement, and hopefully motivate you to do more and to really bring your game to this particular course. I got a nice quote here from one of our participants last year, and I just want to read this quickly because I think it really does drive home the utility of us using this gamification approach. So I'll just read this off, and I think it's pretty telling. And this is from Yujis Rao, who's a member of the Wildlife Conservation Society from Malaysia, who took our class. So we had a global class last year. And they said, for me, online learning has always been a challenge. Most online learning goes like this: watch a video, do multiple options quiz, and then submit for scores. But in this course, the Twine Games actually challenged me to think and use what I learned in the videos when facing real world problems. Plus, the explanation for the wrong selections really helped me to understand better. I don't see this in most quizzes. And if you want to learn more a little about that, the approach we do with some of this gamification, there's a link here at the bottom that you can check out. It provides a little bit more depth on this approach and why we're using it. So the course structure is 3 courses. They're 6 to 7 weeks long. They have a synchronous component where we'll be interacting with you on the YouTube by projecting our sessions on YouTube and monitoring activity on Discord. But we have the majority of the material is asynchronous, so you'll be able to work through it on a week-by-week basis. And it's taught by a series of experts from here at Duke, as well as our partners at Attollo. Right now, the price point is $2,000 a course. But if you decide to sign up for the full sequence, you get a 30% discount, and the price comes in at $4,200, which is, I think, a bargain for the quality of the course that you're going to get. And if you want to see a little bit more about this URL here in the middle is our website, and you can actually get there and learn a little bit more of the details of the course. Okay, and so let me just talk a little bit now briefly about the first course, and then I'm going to pass it on to Troy. But in this introductory course, we're really kind of trying to get you connected with drone technology and the kinds of applications that we want to use. So at the end of this course, you're going to be able to do a bunch of different things, right? You're going to understand a little bit about the aerodynamics of drones and how they fly, why they fly. You'll be able to actually identify different formats, different types of drones, explain how they work. You'll be able to actually sort of explain how drones get applied to a variety of different environmental science missions, whether that's counting animals, studying individual animals, or maybe even studying habitats, or including how humans are interacting with those habitats. You'll be able to explain the basics of remote sensing and other types of analytical approaches, and even go so far as to learn about how machine learning can help you deal with the mountains of data that you generate from these drones. We also cover some important sort of best practice issues. How do we make sure that what we're doing is legal and ethical, with some real world examples. And then by the end of that, you should be able to be confident in talking about how drones get used, and particularly for some complex issues like surveillance and reconnaissance, which are important for some environmental science missions. And ultimately, you should be able to create some sort of conceptual model of how you would apply drones perhaps in your own environmental science or management context. So that's the kind of intro to our first course. And I want to pass it on now to Troy to talk more about the operations course that follows up with that.
All right, so course 2, as Dave mentioned, is geared towards operations. So we want to take you basically through as much of we can on an online training, obviously, to prepare you for your actual flights. So by the end of this course, if I can get my slide to go, here we are. First and foremost, you're going to be prepared to take the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration's Part 107 exam. Now, this is centric to the United States, but it is a requirement. So that is the very bottom line basics. There are lots of other courses out there that could do this. But what we like to do is take it further, and we're going to keep progressing that. So we're definitely going to have the fundamental knowledge you need to pass that. But then also, we've heard it many, many times before of someone says, yeah, I'm a Part 107 operator. And then they tell us about a flight that they've conducted, and it turns out they were like 2 miles from an international airport, which is highly illegal, unsafe. Lots of terrible things could happen by doing that. So we want to really drill it into your head in a fun, informative, and kind of back and forth nature. One of the things that I really like about it is for not only people in the United States, but for if we do have any international students, we have our weekly synchronous sessions that you can jump onto, and we'll do live chat. So we have our set agenda that I go through of sharing more material to build upon the videos that you watch during the week. But then if you want to, we can further dive into your specific country. Obviously, we can't cover every country that there is out there, but with the nature of the number of students, we'll be able to explore a little bit further. And while I may not have the exact answer for you, we can certainly find a lot of similarities between the US and your country likely, and get you pointed in the right direction to receive certification, permits, and etc. So you'll be able to determine wherever you're flying if you do need a waiver or an authorization, whether it be airspace or if you're going to fly over, and this brings it back to what Dave was mentioning of being a scientist pilot. If you're going to fly over, let's say, Wales, you need Marine Mammal Protection Act, etc., National Park Service, and we'll teach you how to go about those permits and where you submit them. And then finally, this really builds upon it of what our mission is as scientist pilots. Of you can go out and fly a drone all day, but if your data is not collected properly and you can't utilize that and turn it into valuable information, then why are you even bothering with the tool of an unoccupied aircraft system in the first place? So we'll teach you best practices on how to collect the best data possible for whatever your mission set is. And in the end, you will become the scientist pilot. So very quickly here, just about the instructors, you've got myself, Jimmy, and John. We are all from Attollo, former military, and then we also have vast amounts of both occupied and unoccupied aircraft time in the military and civilian sector. And then really like this, I threw Dave on there too, because he makes a guest appearance at the one video in each week of our series called the Protocol Playbook. And we focus on operations and we dive into a lot of the weeds on airspace, weather, etc. And then Dave always kind of brings it back in the end for us and really ties it in really well. And so I really love the Protocol Playbook videos, and I think you will too as you click through those. So in order to accomplish all these things that I've told you about, of being the scientist pilot and knowing when, where, and how to fly, etc., these are kind of the basic structure that we have for our 6-week course. Week 1, we try to front load all of the most complicated information. So you see the map up there at the top. That's what's known as a Visual Flight Rules, or VFR sectional. We'll teach you how to read everything that's on there, see what all those different numbers, colors, lines mean. Week 2 gets into aviation weather reports and aviation weather or weather theory in general. So you can read the prog chart that you see down there in the bottom right-hand corner. Week 3 goes into special location permits. So as I mentioned already, we have, you see there and tagged in the bottom left-hand corner of the whale picture of the bubble netting of the NOAA permit numbers. So Marine Mammal Protection Act, we dive into that, Endangered Species Act, etc. What's required to fly a UAS over said species. And then this is really interesting too, the payload effects on performance. So you'll have Julie and Dale, Duke's engineer, talking to you in the first course with Dave. But then as we continue to progress and all of our cameras and technology is expanding, it's shrinking, so we can kind of incorporate it into unoccupied aircraft systems. So if you have a little drone here, you know, it's a fixed camera, so we're not going to be able to use much of a payload on it. But if you want something larger, like we have sitting behind me here, like a DJI Matrice 300, you could start getting into payloads on that. And we'll talk about how those affect the performance on it, not necessarily of how you wire it all together, like Julie and the master engineer can do, but just simply weight and balance, how is it going to affect battery life, etc. And then we get into both a little bit of open source and proprietary software to fly certain drones. Just introduce you to a few different flight softwares if you haven't seen it, if you are new to that. Walk through some mission planning. And then week 6 brings it all together. We will actually have you conduct entire mission planning brief, and that covers aeronautical decision making, safety, contingency plans if something bad were to happen. So as I said on the very first slide, we try to take you as much as possible through an actual live flight experience without taking you out and have you manipulate the controls. So once we have finished our course of course 2, that is basically.
All right. Thanks, Troy. So I am, hopefully my internet is not freaking out right now, but I am the instructor for course 3. That's the UAS data analysis course. And so this course is building upon the last two courses, right? And as Troy was saying, we're at this evolution. And so we're diving deeper into that data and data collection and thinking about how do we collect good data, and what are the factors that we need to be keeping in mind when we are collecting that. And so we're going to be talking about how we collect that with these different platforms and different sensors. And with each of those and in different situations, what are the variables that we need to be keeping in mind when we're collecting the data? What's the environment where we're looking at, and we're setting up our mission plan for a success, not just that we're able to fly it effectively, but that the data that comes back from it is going to be giving us the best products that we can generate from it. And so that's kind of like the beginning of the course, is like thinking about really in-depth thinking about that collection process. And then what this course does is, whereas it kind of jumps into a new avenue for looking at data from the other two courses, and we're going to be doing data labs. So we're getting our hands on different types of drone data, and we're getting you to work with that data and actually go through the process of creating products from it and analyzing it as well. And so part of that process is we are equipping you with virtual machines. We're providing you a virtual machine that you'll be able to connect to, and you'll be able to, it'll have all the software and computing requirements necessary to run the different packages that we're going to be using. And so we're going to be, those data labs are going to provide you experience with a number of different software packages. And that includes some of like the structure from motion process. That's actually what you're looking at here. That's Pix4D, that mapper that is being shown here. And then, moving in from how we take products from some of these different packages and pull them into for geospatial analyses in something like ArcGIS Pro. And so you'll be looking at different workflows, and some of the data you're going to be working with during the course is going to include like a number of different types of data types, like multispectral data, and there's like classification workflows that we'll examine. There's 3D data that we'll be using, and so that'll be looking at structure from motion, taking image sets and creating 3D products, 2D and 3D products for analysis. And then we'll be looking at still imagery analysis. So thinking about capturing single images and analyzing them, taking different measurements using that process. And then also we'll be going, and you'll be experiencing sort of a deep learning workflow and looking at how this, you won't necessarily have to build it. You'll be using a structured lab where you can actually just see all the parts of it and see how it works when it goes through the deep learning process. So all of this is set up so that we assume you have no experience with any of this. So it's set so that anyone at any level of experience can kind of come into this and be able to accomplish each of the data labs. We've worked really hard to make sure that everything, the instructions, everything help you get to success with the data labs. And then finally, the last kind of piece of what we want to do is, through this process of the Discord community engagement and the live sessions that we're going to have during the course, and the office hours that I'll be providing to basically be available for interacting. And you'll have a virtual machine that you can access with all of the software for processing, is that you have an opportunity we can discuss your data, something that maybe you're really interested in looking at. And we can use that during the course and discuss it as you would like.
Thanks. So Hannah just put in the chat We'd love to open it up to questions at this time. Please, if you would prefer to chat your question in, go ahead and send Hannah a direct message with any questions about a particular course or the course sequence. You can also raise your hand and we'll monitor that if you would like to ask your question aloud.
Thanks so much. Okay, we do have one question to get us started. And that is, this is all online. Is there a course that teaches us how to fly?
No, there is currently not a course that teaches you actual flying sticks. We do have some links to simulators built into the course though, so we try to get you as close as we can, like we said, and go through all of the steps up to prior mission planning. And then we actually have a sim through Emotion, which is what we utilize to fly our SenseFly EBX. And everything is exactly the same as if you're going to fly that. But then there's a lot of open source softwares out there too that you can use that will teach you quadcopter basics of some flight, if you will.
Thanks. If anyone has any questions, if you could please direct chat me.
You can also raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask directly. I don't see any hands raised. Justin touched on this a little bit, but I've had a common question from people asking more about prerequisites, folks that maybe don't have a technical background or haven't done this sort of thing. Justin, you laid out pretty well that you've made the instructions for course 3 and the data analysis very accessible to folks without prior training in that. Dave and Troy, if you could just touch on that, and then we do have a hand after that.
Yeah, you bet, Laura. Yeah. So I think, for the first course, again, it's very open and relatively easy to follow. I think the biggest challenge that people might face in the first course is learning how to read scientific articles if they haven't done that before. But we actually provide a set of resources in the course to help you learn how to decode scientific articles and get the real useful information out of that. And so a lot of how you're going to interact with the materials, how you're going to communicate is relatively well spelled out in the course materials to help you sort of get connected and working with the materials in a really productive way.
Yep, and same for the operations course. We're designed to take you from zero to hero for airspace, weather, and all things of flight and mission planning. So no prior experience required. You will get all the drone fundamental foundation work from course 1. And even if you only take course 2, you'll still be fine with getting all of the necessary information you need just for the operations side, but certainly recommended for all of them.
Does anyone else want to add anything to that question? Or are we okay? Cool. Gabriel, would you like to ask your question?
All right. I just wanted to ask. I'm actually attending from outside the US. I just completed my PhD in marine biology, and what actually attracted me to this online interaction was the fact that you can actually collect data, in-situ data, with this application, this robotics, marine robotics. Of course, I actually have challenges of collecting data myself when I can actually use some of these robotics to just collect in-situ data and then get the recording. So I want to know, in attending for somebody without a prerequisite like a background in this, how do I start? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be physical? How do I get into starting as a marine biologist? So how do I start? Does it have any connection with bioinformatics? I just wanted to get that part straight.
Were the instructors able to catch all of that, or?
I got some of it. I was kind of hard to hear you, Gabriel. There's a little bit of like static going on in while you're talking, but my sense was that you're sort of wondering about really just the fundamentals and getting going with this. And honestly, this is if you're thinking about a scientific context, then this is a really great choice to be able to sort of get the initial uh, understanding of the technology. In the first course, we'll actually explain how both energy and information flow through a drone, how it works, helpful if you're troubleshooting things in the field, that kind of stuff. And so, the fundamental parts of drone technology are covered, as well as the operations and the analytical parts. I think I caught in there that you were interested in about bioinformatics as well. And there are definitely some links into that from the courses. We'll expose y'all to deep learning, um, as applications and actually walking through that. And some of the other sort of larger scale data analytics that Justin will be teaching start to touch into those areas. And hopefully that answers most of your question. It was hard to hear what you were saying in some cases.
Gabriel, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah,
I think it's really hard to hear you, so would you mind chatting me your question and I can repeat it to Dave? I get that. While we wait on that question, we have a couple of other questions in the chat. And one question is, will all the instructors have office hours every week?
I mean, I can kind of start off with that. The nice thing about the way the course is set up is that we use a Discord server, which you can access through your web browser to be able to have kind of persistent messaging. And so, if you haven't used it before, it's kind of like having a system like Zoom, like we're using right now, but the chat doesn't disappear. And so, it's a really great way to be able to ask questions, and the instructors will be monitoring that all the time, right? And so that we'll be able to actually respond to those questions throughout the day in a lot of cases, and or certainly as a roundup at the end of the day. So it's kind of a in some ways, maybe a better situation than having specific office hours all the time. But that's also something that we could actually arrange if you need it. And again, the Discord is a really great tool for that. You don't have to send out invites or anything. We can just log on, jump on a voice channel, and talk about what the issues might be. So and maybe Justin, you could talk about your office hours for the analytics part as well.
Yeah, and I was gonna add, Dave, like the live sessions, I feel like are sometimes those are also a good opportunity. Like if there are things that people want to discuss, that's also another good, that the live sessions will be for all courses. In my course, in addition to the live sessions, just because of the nature of the data labs, which are a little bit more, there's a lot more involved in those steps, and you learning, going through new softwares and everything, that we implemented office hours, and that was helpful for some people for that third course. They would join, like I would just basically be available for certain periods during the week, and you could jump on, and we could even like schedule a time that we could organize a new, like another set of hours if necessary. So.
And we have a couple more questions. Here's a question. For those not directly in related fields and not actively looking for jobs, is there a possibility to continue working with data or contribute to it, like in any way as a hobbyist, perhaps through the Discord or another platform?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this really interesting nexus between environmental science questions and citizen science, or community-based science, and I think that's a growing opportunity. And the nice thing about that Discord server is it has a private side that's set aside for us, as a course where we can work on things together, but it also has a public side, and so all the folks that were in our course last year are already inside the server and are still using it. And so we're going to inject you into this community of researchers and enthusiasts. which is just going to grow over time. And so there's a lot of opportunity there, and it would be something that would be really fun to talk to you more about, because I think there's lots of great ideas that kind of come out of that sort of community science vector. I think there's also some things that we need to be careful with, right, so that we don't cause harm during those situations. But that's also part of learning, and things that we will actually talk about in the courses that we present in this sequence.
And we have another question, and this person has multiple questions, but I'm going to ask the first part first and then combine the other bit with some other questions that are similar. With a successful education in this field of environmental surveying, how realistic is it to create a career in data collection on behalf of local well researchers and WSDFW? This person's not a scientist, but in Washington and works near a well research center.
Well, I think this is one of the perfect ways to get going. I think the nice thing about joining this kind of core sequence is that you get injected into a community and you build a network of people who may have experience or be working in those areas. And so, aside from the fundamentals that you'll learn to prepare you to start actually doing that kind of work, you'll also start to generate this network of colleagues that can help you identify potential career paths, possible job opportunities, and it's always helpful to have something that you can have on your resume, right, to show people that you've actually invested in your training to actually get to the point where you could do the work. So again, I think the way that we've set up this course sequence is we kind of tee people up to be able to take that next step. You come out with a certificate, you come out with a complete understanding of the applications, the operations, and the analytical pathways that people are using in the field right now. So it's current and relevant, and can position you well to take those next steps.
Great. We had a couple people kind of ask a similar question, which is, we have this 3-course sequence that the 3 of you have talked about today, but are there continuing education courses that people could take in the future? Or are there future drones courses that are being developed if people are interested in furthering their education as the field changes?
Yeah, I mean, I can say, like, when we teach this course, it will be updated, as we move along. Regulations change frequently, new systems, new sensors, there's lots of new things that happen pretty much every year, which is fun and exciting, and an opportunity to continue to sort of elevate our game. And then there are also opportunities to take other courses. So we actually teach, in-place courses as well, where students come to the Marine Lab and actually we'll do a more focused course with some more hands-on work. It's a very different experience. It's much it will be more expensive, and it requires some investment of time in place, but there are opportunities like that as well, and of course those are always evolving.
Yeah, and I was going to add, we haven't started to develop any more courses necessarily that's tied to this course sequence, but we've definitely talked about the potential, because there's just as Dave was saying, as things are being developed, and deep learning itself could be a whole nother course that people could take with drone stuff. But engaging in that Discord community that we've been talking about would be, and if we do start developing some of those courses, that's a place we would publicize them. You'd have quick access to whatever is out there and available is the idea. So
thank you. A question for Troy, I believe, for the most part. Do these courses provide all the prerequisites for the FAA's Part 107 exam?
There's not really prerequisites per se you can sign up and you have to pay a registration fee in order to take the test. It's $175 with the FAA. You have to go to an FAA certified testing center, which is usually associated with an airport, and take the test. You can sign up and do that tomorrow. There's no like prerequisites to do in order to go and take that test. But this course will prepare you to have the foundational knowledge you need. You still will have to study a little bit on your own, and self-paced study, but we cover all of the most complicated things and really try to set you up in the best way possible to be prepared to go and take the test. We have a great success rate of people going and taking the test after completing our courses. But yes, no prerequisites.
And I'm going to read the final question I see in the chat. If you still have questions after I read this, please chat me and let me know if I've missed you or we haven't answered all of your questions. The final question is, do you have a due date to sign up for each course?
Maybe we should pass that one to Laura.
Sure, I can take that one. So we will take registrations for the course up until the start of the course date, but there's a cap on the course. So we encourage you to sign up as soon as you can because the courses may fill up. They filled up really quickly last year, and we are anticipating them to fill up soon. So you have a couple more weeks to sign up for course 1, but I would encourage you to get it in because it is first come, first serve.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, but I do want to pass along all the audience's thanks to our panel of instructors for their time today. And I'd also like to thank all of you in the audience for attending and learning more about this great course sequence.
Thank you all so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and end the session right now, but we will follow up with any questions. If you have questions in the coming days, we're happy to chat with you more and get you focused on the path that you want to be focused on. So thank you again to everyone for being here tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone.